Welcome to the Dr. Leadership Show, where we take a look at how you approach your work and personal life and how we can make the most out of both of them. A weekly get-together where we get real about self-improvement and development as we all make this not-so-easy journey through life. Our discussions will cover ideas and concepts from how to grow your career to how to lead your family towards prosperity and happiness. We don't pretend to know it all, and the doctor is the first to be vulnerable, discussing his own weaknesses, both past and present. This is about growing together and having some fun while we discuss what is happening in the crazy world we live in and how to make the most of it. Let's strive for awesome together. Let's get after it. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Leadership Podcast. Hope you're having an awesome day. Hey, we're going to jump into episode 56 here in just a minute, and I'll let you know about the title. But hey, big thanks to those additional listeners that decided to join this last week. Very, very thankful for that, to join the membership lounge. Again, remember, membership lounge, the membership site where you can get access to the Leadership Lounge interviews and all of the episodes a week or two early. You get to be special. You get to talk about, hey, have you heard about the Dr. L show last week? And everybody goes, no, what? And they go, got to join, man. But we can be checked out there at www.drleadershipresults.com. We can also be emailed for content ideas, feedback. Hey, get off the air, you suck, whatever you want to tell me. But that can be at our email address, which is drleadershipresults@gmail.com. But want to jump in here because got a lot of good content, I think. Hope you agree. This week's episode is Be a Great Storyteller. And I think this is important in a lot of things in life. One is, as a leader, it's important to be a good storyteller. As a salesperson, it's great, or an individual contributor, it's great to be a great storyteller. And also it helps in social environments a bunch too, and I'll get to that in just a few minutes. I want to start off on just something that I found interesting that I found when I was looking this thing up. Had a great HBR article, Harvard Business Review. Also, there was some great content from a book, The Moth Book. Draw to light, right? That's what moths are. Is they've been drawn to light. Check it out, the Moth Book. It's a Moth Book. It's about great storytelling. But Doris Kearns Goodwin, she's a historian, and she was asked what questions she would ask former President Abraham Lincoln if she could. Now, she was a Lincoln historian and a presidential historian. So she was asked, hey, if you had the shot, if you could sit down, the old story or the old question, if you could have dinner with somebody, who would you have dinner with? She was asked, what questions would you ask Abe? And she goes, I guess I'm a bad historian because my response is going to surprise you. She goes, I wouldn't want to ask him a question. I would want to ask him to tell me a story. And I thought, wow, what a kind of cool but interesting idea here from a historian forever. And she went a little deeper and she goes, see, Lincoln was known as an epic storyteller, a joke teller, entertaining, a raconteur, someone that can recount something. Raconteur, spelled R-A-C-O-N-T-E-U-R. Great word. He was a great storyteller just in general. He also inspired with stories. And this is it's going to be one of my points here in a few minutes. But, I mean, when you talk about a guy that had to be able to get a good story across and get people to buy in, he inspired the country. He convinced them to go to war with themselves, with the South, now to right the epic wrong of slavery. But he had to have his dancing shoes on to get that accomplished. That was no small task. He was also an attorney by trade. An interesting thing, talking about somebody that just keeps going. He ran for office and failed. Went for senator seats first and failed. Then ran for president and won. He had to be an epic storyteller. He had to be an epic inspirational speaker. Gettysburg Address, the list goes on, taken way too soon by a Booth. Terrible, terrible shot in the back of the head in the Ford Theater. Awful story. If you don't know your history about Abe Lincoln, I would look into it. But he was also an attorney by trade, and storytelling is a skill needed there as well. I'll tell you what, if I am ever prosecuted for some of the things I've done in my past life, tongue-in-cheek a little bit there might be a few things, but I'd want a really good attorney, and a really good attorney, he or she needs to be a really good storyteller to paint a picture of my innocence. There's an old study that was referenced in a former Harvard Business Review article that I went back and looked up, and it had a couple of psychologists from Stanford, and it was Gordon Bauer and Michael Clark. They both have their middle initials, so they're important. It's Gordon H. Bauer and Michael C. Clark of Stanford. And in 1969, they did a study, and listen to this math. We're 7 times more likely to remember a fact when it's wrapped in a story. And I believe that, right? I believe that. I've never had a leader myself. I started thinking about this too. Have you ever had a leader that, that really inspired you? I've had good leaders and I've had great leaders. And I've had not so good leaders. All of the great leaders were really good storytellers, and I'll touch on that later. I'm not talking about spinning the yarn and ghost stories here. I'm going to give you some insight in what kind of stories you need to be able to portray. But 7 times more likely? I've never been inspired by somebody that wasn't a good storyteller. All of a sudden, I'm buying into this. I'm thinking, they're onto something here. So my guest on the Leadership Lounge several months ago, this episode, first of all, episode 55 that we're talking about, 56, it's been officially 1 year worth of episodes because I loaded 5 episodes up the first week. So it's been exactly 1 year that you've been putting up with me, and I appreciate all of you greatly. But early on in the Leadership Lounge, I scored a huge guest. And he came on Hall of Fame and Super Bowl winning professional football coach and college football coach and winemaker, Coach Dick Vermeil. Wonderful storyteller. Check out the episode. Leadership Lounge, Coach Dick Vermeil. Check it out. It's great 45, 50 minutes. He stated a compelling item when we were talking, and it made me remember this too when I started talking about storytelling. He said, something to this effect. You remember experiences more than specific times, right? You remember the environment you were in. You remember the overall story, what the weather was like. You remember the experience, you remember the concert and who all was there because it was an experience that emotionally got to you somehow. What he means is we remember what inspires us, what motivates us, what enlightens us, what excites us, because we get all of those synapses up in our brain, firing, pumping that data into the hard drive of our memories. Great experience can also be brought to life with a great story. I'm a big music hound. There are some unbelievable storytellers in the music world. One of them is Jim Croce. Now, if you don't know who Jim Croce is, you need to look him up. Late 60s, 70s storyteller. Check this out.
Uptown got its hustlers, the Bowery got its bums.
Yeah.
42nd Street got Big Jim, a walker, he a bull shooting son of a gun.
Now, this guy's a storyteller.
Yeah, he's big and dumb as a man can come, but he's stronger than a country.
See how you can picture it?
And when the bad folks all get together at night, they all call Big Jim Boy.
Yeah. You got to be a great storyteller.
And they say you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim.
That's a storyteller. You can picture it. I hadn't heard that song in 15 years, I bet. I could sing along with it like it was yesterday. It's because it's a great story. Check out Bad Bad Leroy Brown. Check out Operator by him. He used to sit with people like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They were smoking stuff and doing the things they did back then in the late 60s and early 70s. And he had a farm, and they'd sit up in a barn, and they'd come up with songs like that. Woo! Better living through chemistry, man. But Jim Croce was a great storyteller. It paints a picture. How about this? Do you know these two types of people? How about the first one here? Someone who knows a joke. Hey, I got a great joke, right? They come to you, but they can't tell it to save their life. It's that they're awful at it, And no matter how great the joke is, at the end they screw up the punchline. They don't set the stage right. They don't have the right cadence right. They're not animated to give it a little bit of action. And the joke just, you go, yeah, that's good. Now, I think I'm a really good joke teller. I've been told this. I think I'm a really good storyteller. That's why I think that's why I have a little bit of success with this thing, is I can sit here, drop a page and a half worth of notes, some bullet points, and go. The second person in comparison, there's a great joke teller that can make people just go hysterical with a decent joke. It's the same in sales and same in leadership. Same in life, social. There's always somebody that draws people in at the party, right? Some people, you say, the center of attention. Sometimes it's ego-driven and those types of things, but some people are just funny and intriguing, and you want to engage with them. That's important in life, too. Successful people are better storytellers. Successful people can paint a picture. People that have good followership, however you want to say that, are inspirational. That comes through stories. Now, I said there's a few different, I wasn't saying you got to be able to tell a ghost story, right? There are a few different types of stories that I think you need to be good at. First one, and I talk about this in a roundabout ways a lot of times, is a trust story. And what I mean by this is when you share your story about you, anything in there, you're sharing a piece of yourself, right? I mean, you're opening it up and you're talking about yourself. And this story is an opportunity to build trust. In doing that, you're building connections, right? You're building a relationship, and trust stories humanize you. Some people will never tell a story that doesn't paint themselves as perfect. It's fake book, right? They don't get on and make fun of themselves on Facebook, to those that haven't listened before. They got to portray this perfect person, the filtered world, the picture apps that make them all look wonderful. The lip fillers are automatic on the filters and all that crap. Some people just can't portray themselves unless it's perfect. Some people can't be seen as not knowing the right answer. Some people can't be seen as always being right. Remember when we discussed how and if you don't remember this, there's one that was called on self-deprecating humor. There's a Dr. L episode way back when, and there's studies. You're more successful, more likable if you utilize self-deprecating humor. It helps people succeed and build trust. This is the same thing here. Telling a trust story, it doesn't have to be a humorous story, but one that shows you're vulnerable. If you engage with people and show that you aren't perfect, they're going to trust you. There's going to be a connection. He's real. She's real. This is a great story to be able to tell as an individual contributor, as a leader, to show vulnerability. Wow, that's tough this morning. To be able to show that you aren't perfect is going to do you some real good. I promise you. Try it. Try it. Try it. The second type of story I think you need to have in your quiver is a teaching story. Now, great leaders are great teachers. Stories can make the complex simple, make it so people can more clearly understand. Go back to the Jim Croce song. He's just clicking along, man. It's a groovy tune, and the words just paint it. Every time I hear a Croce song, I am seeing what's happening. That music's very complex, right? I don't know how to play a guitar like that. I don't know how to sit down and write chords out and tie it all together and get the beat right and the cadence right. But man, he makes that complex process sound just awesome. A teaching story can be yours. It can be somebody else's, as long as it teaches. Have you ever learned a lesson the hard way? Or have you ever been involved in learning a lesson? Now, one big lesson, I think, is kind of telling the truth. And I'm going to tell a story is 100% true. My wife said to me last night, I said, I'm got kind of my topic here. And she goes, you need to tell another story. You haven't told a story in a while. And I've got 1,000 funny stories about myself that are just like, you got to be kidding me. So me and the boys back in high school, we had a good crew, and we had 2 carloads. We had 8 of us out, and we had just 3 of the guys were on the baseball team, and very good baseball team, and we had a very good high school baseball team. A lot of these guys played in the Little League World Series back in 1980, Grandview Little League, and we had just won a huge rivalry game with a local school that is able to kind of recruit kids from all around and bring them in. Nothing against the local Catholic school, so they would go after all the good players, and they were ranked like first in the state, and we were ranked like third or fourth, and we beat them, on their turf. Well, me and the boys decided to go out, and we got 2 carloads of us, and we were fortunate kids, a couple of nice cars. One guy had a Mustang GT brand new one, the other guy had a Z28 brand new one, was not mine. And because I've talked about my Z28 before, very fortunate. Had our folks fooled on that car's not fast. And we all, unfortunately, kind of back in the day, drinking age was 19, we were 18. But we had some cold ones. And we went out kind of on the edge of the country, and we parked in the back of this grade school that was out kind of in the country. And we're popping some tops, celebrating, playing some music, having a good old time. We'd been there about an hour and a half. And all of a sudden, around the building come 2 state trooper cars, pretty fast. Spotlights on. And what do? Boom, we're off like lightning running. And you remember the elementary schools, they had like a field where they had recess. So we were back by the jungle gyms. We run across here, and we come to a fence, and there's a cornfield on the other side, and corn's coming up. And we jump that fence like we were running from prison, man. And we go and we bed down in the crop there, and there's 8 of us lying there. And then the reality starts to hit, goes, well, they know who the 2 drivers are, or the families. We left our cars there. We're not very smart. And we just hear the cops kind of laughing. They're 100 yards away or something, going, these are some nice cars to have to tow. And finally, I'm sitting there, and I'm with a bunch of friggin' cowards. And I go, I'm going to go talk to them. They go, what? I go, I'm going to go talk us out of this thing. I think I can get us out of this. This was probably the night that I realized I was going to go into sales, because I walked into the lion's den. I hop over the fence. My picture is this movie picture, right? I come walking out of the darkness, and there's these 2 big state troopers. And they go, well, how are you? I go, good evening, officers. And they go, well, we know you weren't alone. We saw you scampering like deer in the night, and there's 2 cars. What's going on? I said, officer, I'm really, really sorry. We ran. But as you imagine, it's kind of the fight and fright thing hit us, and we took off. And they said, well, what are you doing out here? There's a bunch of beers and stuff. What are you guys doing? I said, well, sir, have you ever been involved in a rivalry game? And I just started telling the story. And I said, we just took down X high school tonight in baseball. 1 versus 4 or 5, I forget what we were. And 3 of the boys here are involved in the game. One of them was pitching. We're all best buddies. We have not beaten this team in years. A lot of them are our friends. And doggone it, and we were from kind of the wrong side of the tracks. East High School, right? We were the ruffians. And I said, and there was an old saying that was Lee Township against the world. That was kind of our area in town. It was called Lee Township originally. And I said, kind of the Lee Township against the world thing. Well, lo and behold, one of the troopers was an East High grad from about 15 years earlier. He goes, you guys took down X high school? Yes, sir, we did. He goes, well, holy shit. That's friggin' awesome. What was the score? I said 5-4. Still remember the score, 5-4. Bottom of the 9th, they had 2 people on, and there was only 1 out, and we turned a double and won, and the place went nuts. There was probably 1,000 people at this ball game back then. It was great. And I said, the boys we're kind of cutting loose a little bit. I'm sorry. And he goes, are you guys of age? No, sir, we aren't. But we were big enough to beat X high school. And he goes, call your boys out. And I go, sir? He goes, call your boys out. So I yelled, and I said, guys, come on out. So here you see them come one at a time. And they come walking up, and State trooper says, well, you got, and I'm not trying to portray myself as the hero here, but they go, well, you got one brave guy came up here and he told us, and here's the moral of the story, told us the truth. And he goes, I understand you guys took down Dowling High School, I'll say it. Dowling High School tonight. Yes, sir, we did. That's awesome. I'm an East High grad. We never beat Dowling. And he goes, I'm a Cubs fan. Any of you guys Cubs fans? And most of us were. Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Now, there's one guy, and I'm going to not say his name to protect his innocence. He goes, I'm a Cardinals fan. The officer is out skipping a beat, goes, looks like one of you's going to jail, because the Cubs and the Cardinals have this huge rivalry. And the kid that said that is now a brain surgeon. Kid you not. Not very street smart that night. And the officer kind of laughed, and he goes, well, I cheer for the Cubs whenever they're not playing the Cardinals, which is like a sin. That's like saying you're a Bears and a Packers fan. So anyway, he comes up and he says, listen, you guys came out, you had somebody, came up here, told us the truth. We understand the story. I've been on the wrong side of the tracks in my life. And you guys had a big win tonight. Basically, I'm paraphrasing here. And he said, we're going to let you go. We're like, great. And we start to get in the car. He goes, but give me the beer. So we were dejected. We gave him the beer. We went and got some more. But that's a true story. Now, me being able to tell the story, just come up and kind of paint a picture that, have you ever been involved in a rivalry game? That really helped him become inspired and understand what we were doing. He could relate. That's what's so important in these things. So the teaching story you have to be able to tell as a leader, I'm tying in that was a lesson that by telling the truth, I'm giving you a teaching story, I got a better result than if I didn't. Moral is tell the truth. Wrap it around why you did the stupid thing you got caught for and didn't. And the other moral of the story is if somebody says they're a Cubs fan and they're wearing a gun and have handcuffs, you don't say you're a friggin' Cardinals fan. He is now a brain surgeon. I kid you not. The next type of story is an action story. And this is about inspiration. These are the ones that I use a lot because I like to inspire people, right? As a salesperson, you need to inspire your prospect. You need to, to choose you and your company. As a leader, you need to inspire your teams to go for the goals the team has, the objectives you've been given. I've talked about Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo before, but she said it best around these action stories. She says speaking to people's hearts are more important than speaking to people's minds. This is true about coaches. Be a great halftime coach. I use that example a lot. Paint a picture to your customer on how good it will be choosing you and your company. This comes from your own belief. First of all, to be inspiring, you have to be inspired. To be motivating, you have to be motivated. To drive people to greatness, you have to be driven. Check the box on yourself first, and then tell a story. Be a good action storyteller. You're sharing these beliefs enthusiastically, and suddenly people start to go, yeah, we can do it. Let's go get them. It's the halftime thing, right? Talked about it last week's episode. I've probably talked about it a dozen times. Team gets down at half, comes out, starts painting the sidewalk with the other team. Better halftime, better adjustment, better coach. Fourth type of story is, how about stories about values? As a leader, you got to believe in the feeling first, right? You got to believe in your family first. So let's say I'm a family first and health first oriented person. I said this week, I love my company, but it's all about the people. But I said this week to somebody, if my family had an issue, my wife or kids, my mother, my brothers, my brother, my sisters, anything like that, or we had a health issue, I'd be out of here so fast because the company, they're going to go on without me. If they deselect me, they're going to move on, right? They have to lead with their needs first. But if you're going to be a value-driven person, you have to be able to tell stories that show you're living that value. Show that you take vacations, as an example. Before your job before you show your job as the most important thing, if you're value-led, you need to show and model that the other thing is more important. What I'm talking about here, be it the family or the health or whatever might be the case. One thing is mental health. I used to not take vacations, not a whole week. I took a 2-weeker about 15, 18 years ago, and it changed my life. I will shut it down. Now, I still check email a little bit because I hate that re-entry because there's so much building up. But you got to be able to turn it off, man. Don't email your team members or your customers on the weekends. I think it's a big no-no. You got to create separation so that they can have that value of their family, that value of their mental health, that value of recharging. Don't ask anybody to do you wouldn't do yourself. That's leading with your values too. You will build a following. Trust me. The final story I kind of wanted to talk about here is that vision story. Painting a vision. Now, I am a military historian. So I'm going to use somebody, if you don't know a lot about Winston Churchill, shame on you. Look him up, read about him, find out how great a leader this guy was. He helped save the world. In 1940, 1941, it did not look good. The Nazis were kicking the crap out of the world. The Rhineland had been given away in a treaty, what they thought was going to work, by the former Prime Minister of Great Britain. And the Nazis went in and took over that area, then invaded Poland with the Blitzkrieg. If you don't know what Blitzkrieg is, look it up. Be a historian, understand, learn lessons so they aren't repeated. They then went in, quickly occupied France, beat the crap out of them, and the British had sent troops in to help there. And if you don't know what it is, look up Dunkirk, because it was an embarrassing thing for the British. But the Nazis were kicking the crap out of them, and Churchill had some speeches where he inspired the belief and the vision that his country could win, that they would never surrender. Last man, last woman, you cannot take us without coming through us. I was very fortunate about 7, 8 years ago. My wife won a leadership trip, a phenomenal trip, one I would never be able to pay for myself. Did almost a week in New York City, the finest restaurants and hotels, then went to London. And it was right after the extremist knifing attacks, the stabbings on some of the walkways and some of the pedestrians in London, and we almost didn't make the second leg of the trip. Fortunately, we were at the CEO of her company, and they had some former CIA people running security for us, and we did a lot of things privately. We went to the Crown Jewels alone. We went to Churchill's war rooms before it opened. And Churchill's war rooms are down underneath the city streets, and they are exactly the same as the moment the war ended. Cigarette butts are still in ashtrays. They've got it plexiglassed off so you can't get to it. They actually opened it up and let us go into these plexiglassed off protected not office areas, but these big war tables where they had the maps and where their troops were, and cubes of sugar still sitting there next to cups that used to have tea in it. It's evaporated over the years. Churchill's bed. And also down there you see the artwork by Churchill. Churchill was also an artist. Not only could he paint a picture with his words, but he could literally paint a picture. But Germany bombed and bombed and bombed London, and it was known as the Battle of Britain. And his Spitfires, which was a type of fighter plane back then, the British Spitfires, were able to push back the bombers of Germany. They had a great new invention that was very, very primitive, but radar. They could see them coming. They could get their planes in the air, meet them over the channel, the English Channel, before they got over London or southern Britain, and took the fight to them a little bit. But Churchill used to stand up on the roof of the building that his bunkers were down underneath, smoking a cigar, screaming up at the fighters, "Get 'em, boys!" And his people are going, "You can't be up here." It's supposed to be completely dark, right? There was no lights, so they couldn't see where they were dropping the bombs. Churchill'd stand there with a whiskey and water and a cigar smoking, screaming and watching the fight. I mean, this guy was brave or stupid, one of the two. An interesting fact about Churchill, all he drank for the entirety of the war was 1 to 2 parts whiskey and 7 to 8 parts water, whiskey and water, all day, every day. And it was said he did it for nerve and courage. He knew he had to be the strongest. He knew he had to inspire. He knew he had to paint the vision, and he better have his nerve. Just interesting stuff. So if you're ever in London, go to the war rooms down underneath the city. It's a great thing. You can go down and spend about an hour and a half with it. You get to see how they lived during the Battle of Britain. But Churchill, if you don't know him, unbelievable leader, great visionary. He inspired a nation following the embarrassment of Dunkirk. Read that story, like I said. He inspired them, and it's a key leadership attribute. And then the U.S. got fully involved in it, and we worked together with our allied powers and whooped the tail and saved the world. We were awesome. They were awesome. You're awesome. Keep that shit up. Talk next week.